Hey friends, I'm Rhiannon from Drawn by Rhiannon, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my top 5 sewing tips. So I never actually learned how to sew in school. That's not something that we did at my school. So I never actually learned how to sew until I was 16 when my mum taught me, and I went to college and started studying textiles, and it all just started from there really. After my A-levels I went on to study fashion at uni, and I picked up so many little tips and tricks, and also through sewing pretty much every day with the business as well. I've gathered all these little things that are really useful, and I thought I would share them with you. One of the most important things when you start sewing is that you have different scissors for each job. So I would highly recommend getting a pair of scissors for cutting fabric, a pair of scissors for cutting paper, and then a little pair of scissors for cutting threads. So they don't have to be super expensive. This is my shears that I got when I started studying fashion at uni. They're really nice, they're really quite heavy, but they're a great length. These are 10-inch shears and they're just fantastic. It's worth, if you can, going into a shop and just having a feel of them, see what size fits your hands best and what sort of weight you want to get on your scissors, because some of them can be like too heavy, so it is worth giving them a little try out if you can. Then it's also really important to have a separate pair of scissors for when you're cutting paper. So if you're doing any dressmaking and you need to cut out some paper pattern, or equally if you're doing craft projects and you've maybe downloaded a template offline or something, get a nice pair of sharp scissors to use for your paper, so that you get really nice clean cut, and it's just going to make your sewing a lot easier if you've got a really nice sharp pair of scissors that's going to give you a nice clean line on your patterns. Then finally, you're going to want a little pair of scissors for cutting thread. So these are embroidery scissors. Again, they're not super expensive. I think these are like £6-7 from a craft shop. But yeah, they've got tiny little blades on them that are really sharp. So it's great for getting in to cut off your threads at the end of your stitching. I would also recommend putting it on a little lanyard. So I got this lanyard from the zoo, got little pandas on it. But it's great because when you're sewing, you just have it around your neck, and then your scissors are just there, you're not looking for them all the time. So this is something that I've only started doing in the past year or so, but it has made such a difference because I was forever losing my scissors when I was sewing, but now I know they're around my neck, I can't lose them. My second little sewing tip is something that I picked up when I was studying fashion at uni, and that is to use your hands for measurements. So work out what an inch is, what a centimetre is on your fingers, and that's going to make sort of guessing so much easier. So for instance, I know that my 2 fingers together is an inch and my little pinky is a centimetre, and when you're sewing, if you need a seam allowance or anything like that, it's really handy just to know straight away what sort of size that is going to be. My third sewing tip is to invest in some decent pins. You might think, oh, I'll just get the cheapest ones, but honestly, they bend so easily, they're not good quality, and they are such a pain when you're trying to sew, and they keep snapping or they're bending when you're trying to get them in. So that is something that I would really recommend, is worth spending a bit more money on, and getting different sorts as well. So I have longer pins like this where I use for makeup pads if I'm sort of pinning a wider area onto stuff. But then I also go for the smaller pins as well, for when you're just doing little bits of sewing and you're doing something more intricate and you need sort of really good stability. These are great because they're quite short, but they're really sharp, so they're great for holding little seams. I also have my smaller pins on this little magnetic pin dish, which is fantastic because you can just throw the pins at it, they're not going to fall off, and it's just easier than sort of trying to stab them into a pin cushion every time. Then I also have some little sewing pegs, which I've mentioned before in a video, but honestly, if you're sewing any water resistant fabric or any fabric that will mark from having pins in it, these are such a lifesaver because they are really grippy. I was quite surprised when I first started using them how well they do actually hold the fabric, and yeah, you won't get any pin marks from them. Just pop them in. Obviously you can't sew over them, so just remember to take them out as you sew. But yeah, these are fantastic little things, really worthwhile getting. My fourth sewing tip is another thing that I picked up when I was studying fashion at uni, is to tape out your seam allowance on your sewing machine. So I don't know if you can see here, but I've got little lines of masking tape just here, and that's for when I'm doing the cleaning wipes and have to sew a little square in the middle, and it's so that the square is nice and even, it's the same distance from the edge on each cleaning wipe. But you can also use this if you're dressmaking, because the standard seam allowance for dressmaking is 5/8 of an inch. I don't know what that is in centimetres, but you can literally just mark it out on your sewing machine, put a line of tape there, and then you would just put the edge of the fabric that you're sewing along that line of tape, and you know that you're going to have the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance across your whole garment. My final sewing tip is really important, and something that I'm terrible for doing is cleaning out your sewing machine. So I sew with a lot of toweling when I'm making the makeup pads and the cleaning wipes, and the fluff from the toweling gets everywhere. Don't know if you can see it, but all underneath my machine where around the bobbin is, there's loads of fluff built up, and you can hear it when you're sewing that it needs a clean out. It sort of starts clunking along a bit more, and yeah, it's got to that time when I really need to clean it out, so I thought I'd show you how I do it. So obviously if you have a domestic sewing machine, yours is going to look a little bit different, but it's the same principles. Just get into your machine, into the bobbin case, and I'm sure you'll find there's lots of fluff and all sorts of bits and thread that could do with cleaning up. So the easiest way to clean it I find is just with a paintbrush. Just going to go in and get all the fluff out. That's my top 5 sewing tips. I hope you found that useful. If you did, it'd be really helpful if you could give it a thumbs up, and comment down below if you've got any sewing tips that you'd like to share. I've learned all sorts of little sewing bits and bobs as I've gone along over the years of sewing, so if you'd like me to do another video featuring some more sewing tips or my favourite sewing tools, then drop a comment down below and I'll get onto it. Thanks for watching. Click here to subscribe and click here for another video. I hope you're all having a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!